Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Findorff. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we're going to be heating homes with peat. And we're going to be building the railroad, building houses, and building structures around Findorff. This is Friedemann Friese's latest strategy game of Power Grid fame and many other games. One of my favorite designers, and this is actually the district that he was from, and this takes place back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Let me show you how this economic game works. In Findorff, you're going to have your own board where you have a rondel. It's not in circles, it's going up and down and around this way. You're also going to have tiles that you'll start with. You'll be able to place workers on and grab goods. You'll also be able to buy new tiles later and get more workers and get more things and store those things in your warehouse. And the main way to get points in this game is to purchase these structure cards, which cost all sorts of different things like $18 and a brick. And you'll be able to place this down, and they all have different engine and building abilities. So you'll get $5 every time you go through your little income phase, your bureaucracy phase, if you will. And so you're basically trying to get these cards because they're all worth 50 points. They all cost different things, but they're all worth 50 points at the end of the game. It's the main way to get points. There's other ways to get points, but this is the main way, is racing to get these as fast as you can. But you're trying to do it with engine building, trying to get the best benefits here and plug those into other structure cards. Everyone starts with a whole handful of these. You can draft these cards at the beginning of the game, and that's one of the main things you're trying to do. Now here's the main board in the game. There is a peat market that works similar to a power grid market, and then you're also going to be building those structures throughout the board. For example, if you're able to build the one we just talked about, the park house, you'd find number 10, you would find it, you'd place it on number 10, and this is actually what gives the board color. The board's, kind of beigeish, but as you start to build up the structures, it kind of plops color all over the board. Now, another thing is every time a structure is built by anybody, this begins to go up, and as more and more structures get built, certain ones, like anything 1972 or less, are going to be cost 5 less. So the earlier cards, and all the cards are sort of numbered. This is number 10, 1890, and so any card that has the number 4 or less, which are essentially these years, costs less. So you can wait to get something that's costs a little bit less and do it, get a better benefit for less costs. But it's all about timing of the game and when to build those. Turns are very quick in this game. Let's show you how this works. You have this little guy here, and you're going to go on your rondel. You're going to pick one of these actions, always going down, and when you get to the bottom, you'll do a bureaucracy and then come back up to another action. So for example, let's say you take this. That is the purchase action. There's different things you can purchase. One of them are those structure cards that we just showed you, those green cards. Those are the main things to purchase. The other things are these. These help your actions become more efficient. And they have certain costs, 3, 5, 6, 2. But as you buy these, they get more expensive for the next player or the next person buying them. Now let's say we bought this one for 6. That's our turn. That's it. We go here, we flip it over, and we'll put it here. What this is engine building for how many times you can take that action. Now I just took this action once. Next player's turn. They come around, comes to me. I can take this again. And these are ways to increase your production with brick, 1, 2, or 3, or rails, 1, 2, or 3, or even peat. So maybe we buy this one for 2. And again, all these get more expensive as it goes down. And that allows you to basically put that here. So maybe on my next turn, I go here. You don't have to go in order. Likely you won't. But here, I could take a worker. But instead of taking 1, I could take 2 with this one action because I have that engine built. So I'll actually take 2 workers. Well, what do you do with workers? Well, if you go to the next one on your next turn, that's producing. You could take these workers and you could place them on here to produce. This would get me 2 brick, this would get me 2 peat, and this would get me 1 rail. However, if you end up buying this really expensive one, some of them require 2 workers. So for one action, you could place 2 workers, but you'd get 3 rails. But let's say we just did this, we'd add those to our warehouse. So you'll take brick and rails from the supply, but the peat is important because this is a fluctuating market. I would get 2 of these, and what I'm doing is making this slowly get more and more expensive for when you sell. Because selling is another action you can take, and this allows you to, again, do it once, but you can engine build. When you go here, sometimes you can take 3 or 4 sell actions. Now selling, you could sell a few things. You can sell a rail, for example. Now here, you can sell 1 rail, 1 brick, or up to 2 peat. Now rails will get you $10 every time you sell them. But again, the name of the game is getting these structure cards out. Because remember, they're all 50 points, and a lot of these cost things too, like rails, bricks, and money. Now when you sell rails, they always go out to the railroad. This is the first one that gets built. And this is very important because this is about the timing of the game and different things. Now let's say there was already one out there and you sold one. This says you're going to take 1 peat off. This is going to be influencing the market. For the first half of the game, as the railroad's getting built, peat's going to be coming off, making it more expensive, meaning it's better to sell. So as the railroad gets built, you're going to be taking peat off, peat off, peat off until you get all the way here, and then the game's sort of like halfway over. Then the rail will start from this section and going up, and as the game goes on, the peat's going to be getting added back on. So it's sort of a fluctuating market, very similar to Power Grid. And when you sell peat, you'll be taking the money, like this one, I could sell this one for 6, you could sell up to 2 for 1 action, and I would sell this one for 6. I just made 12 bucks, and now I'm making it, less advantageous for other players to sell, but again, it's going to be coming off pretty quickly in the first half of the game. Now, the other thing you can sell are bricks. Now, bricks also, again, as you saw earlier, help you build these structure cards, which are really important. But they also, if you sell a brick, you put it back in the supply and you can build a house. Now, houses are important. They can kind of go anywhere. It doesn't really matter where they go. And these are going to give you income throughout the game, but also speed up the game clock as well. Because when it's your turn, again, you're going to go from here, you could do this action again, or you could do any of these 3 actions. You can always go 0 to 3. But as you pass through here, you're going to do your own bureaucracy step. Think of bureaucracy as in like Power Grid, but only you're taking it, and you get to decide when to take it, which is a very interesting part of the game. And you'll walk through this little player aid where heating the house, because peat used to heat houses there in Findorff, and so for each of your houses, you'll remove a peat from the market. So in this case, we'd only remove 1, but as you can see, once you start getting more houses out there and other players start getting more houses out there and they start going through bureaucracy, this peat's going to fly back up, again, even more in the first half of the game, and it's going to make peat very expensive to sell, which is good. But here's the other aspect, is for each of your pairs of worker and house, so we have 3 workers right now and 1 house, so that's basically 1 set. We'd get $4 for each of those set, and a rail will come out onto the board. But if I had 3 houses out there and 3 workers, I'd get 4 times 3, 12 bucks, and 3 rails would go on the board. And again, as you're building these railroads, there's, peat's going to be flying off here at the beginning and going back on in the second half. That would take 1 more off. Once it gets here, there'd be 2 more off. Now at this point, 1 of your workers dies because time passes, so you have to keep getting workers over and over. And then optionally, some of the cards that you've built may get you income, like this. Every time I take bureaucracy, I'm getting 5 income. That's great, you get to do all that, but then we haven't even taken our action yet. Then you come around here, you can go to any spot. I could skip them all, go, hey, I'm gonna produce, or hey, I'm gonna get some workers. You can do that thing. So that's pretty much how the game works. And the game will end at the end of the round where the second set of railroads has gotten to this flag. Again, you can do equal turns, so there could be more rails that go there, but that's it. You're gonna basically, at that point, you're gonna get 50 points for every one of those structures that you built, 10 points for every rail you still have, 4 points for every brick you still have, and the maximum cost that's open in the market for all the peat you have, and whoever has the most at the end is the winner. So let's take a look more of these structure cards that you do with the purchase action. Again, the main way to score in the game. Some of them come with their own tiles that do some certain things. Like this one is during every bureaucracy, you're gonna place a house and you'll immediately place a house and you can place them basically right here. On this garden here, you're immediately gonna just place a house. This one's slaughterhouse, you'll be placing the 3 railroads that you actually place there. And then this one here, like you can only build it after the slaughterhouse, the meat market, thematically, but it's gonna make you some money. These make you lots of money, and they're much better to do earlier, but they're hard to get early because they cost a lot. So do you spend a lot of time building up this thing first, because then you can fly and make a ton of money and catch back up with everybody else, or what? It's really interesting. I'll just show you some more here. Like this one is during bureaucracy. You'll get, for every 2 houses that anybody has total on the board, you'll get $1. This one is you get $4 in bureaucracy, but you also get an additional producing. You get a special action here, so it allows you to produce even more. It's like when you buy those little tiles, but essentially this one's not free because you have to do this, but you get it additionally. This one is you'll get 2 peat, and you also have an extra spot in your warehouse. This one is anytime anyone sells peat, you get $1. Things like that. All different ways to run your engine. All right, now before I get to my final thoughts, I want to let you know that if you like my content, there's now ways to get bonus content like first impression videos well before a review will come out, or for many games I don't even end up reviewing. You can even vote for which games get reviewed on the channel. You can also see me opening up packages and getting content earlier than everyone else. Well, if you like that, you can check it out at patreon.com/GameBoyGeek. All right, Friedemann Friese tends to be hit or miss with me, but when he hits hard. He has some of my most favorite games ever. And then I played games of his that I like, that he's kind of like does like science experiments. I like his design philosophy. We'll talk a little bit more about that in detail here. Let's talk about first what I like. This is a very interesting and unique mix of different things. It's got a rondel. It's got engine building. It's an economic game. It's got a little bit of Power Grid in there. It's got a lot going on, and those things mix well, and those are things that I like, all 3 of those things. I love economic games, I love rondels, I love engine building. These three things come together in this game in a fantastic way. Let's talk about how in more detail. First of all, the pacing of this game. One of the things I really like about Friedemann Friese's games are turns are typically quick. This game, they are so fast. Boom, go, I'm gonna buy this tile, go. Next, I'm gonna take 2 workers, go up here. I'm gonna put my workers here, I grab 2 things, your turn, go. Oh, I'm gonna sell 2 peat. I'm gonna get $16 and I get to sell again. I'm going to build a brick and build a house. That's how fast, that's like one of the longer turns, right? They're so fast until you get to bureaucracy and then it kind of slows down, but it's okay because you kind of have to like go through some things, but the turns are so fast in this game. I can't believe it's back around to me because there's so much to think of. But that also creates turn angst because it's like in this game, the turns are so fast and you kind of have the methodology of like, I'm going to do this to get this, to do this, to do that, to get this. You might have like 4 or 5 turns planned in your head right now. You have good short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans in your head. And because the turns are moving so fast, you've got a bunch planned and you're just like, even though they're fast, you've got this angst of like, oh, please come back to me, please come back to me, don't buy that structure card out there, things like that. So it's really interesting. The power grid style market here works fantastic. It's so interesting that like certain things change the market. Obviously, as people buying and selling, it's gonna be fluctuating, but also with building the rails. First half of the game, peat's gonna be coming off the board, becoming more expensive to buy, but more expensive to sell. And then on the second half of the game, it's going to be getting put back, but by that time, there's going to be lots of houses out there, which means more peat's going to be taken off anyway. It's just the way that this fluctuates feels like power grid, but it works in a little bit of a different way, but it still works. I mean, it just works so great. And that's a big thing of this too, is that arc of the peat market. Watching it. Someone sells if I want to sell peat and someone just sold a boatload of them, 4 or 6 of them in one round, which I've seen people do. Wow, it's like I was gonna sell those for 8. Now I'm gonna sell them. I think I'll wait. Maybe I'll do something else now, right? And so there's a lot of interaction with the players. The arc of that peat market changing, different halves of the game, the way that they react is very interesting. The individual bureaucracy step is genius. Now, granted, it is the only part of the game that does slow down. But once you know what you're doing, it goes pretty fast. It's like, oh, we're gonna take off a certain amount of peat, count the houses, 4, take 4 peat off, okay? How many house workers payers do I have? $4 for each. Lay that many rails out, 1 worker dies, and I get some income and maybe something else, go. Like once you get it going, it's not bad, but it's a lot slower than how fast some of the other turns go. But again, it's not a big deal. I love that you have this individual bureaucracy. Like in Power Grid, you're getting your money, and it's like, but you get to decide when you do this. I think that is so brilliant twist in this. And I love that because you get all this stuff. You're making this money, you're doing this, and then you get to take your action. It's like, haha, now what do I get to do? Am I gonna go purchase something, or what do I wanna do? Do I wanna just go get some goods and then come back here? Do I wanna get some goods and sell and come back here? Do I wanna get some of my workers? Like, it's really clever. I love that you're building up cards for engine building. And you've got this engine that you're going. I love that the ones that are harder to get are usually better to do earlier because they're going to help you more through the game. Where if you just buy the cheap ones and get them easy, they don't give you as good of a benefit, which means you're going to be in the lead early, but you're going to get clobbered at the end because the real way to play this game is to get the harder ones first, build this great engine, and let that engine run, get a bunch of money, get a bunch of goods, get all this stuff during your bureaucracy phases. You can take it, almost as fast as you want, just about. And build up that engine and then buy a bunch of the cheap ones towards the end when you got all this money. Like you got 3 or 4 purchase actions. I've seen people buy 3, 4 cards in one turn towards the end of the game sometimes. It's really clever. The structure cards. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the overview is, yes, you do have a hand of them. Yes, you can draft them, but they do have balanced sets to start with, which I really like. But there's also going to be some out by the board that are open that anyone can buy. But if you buy one of those, you have to replace it with one of the ones from your hand. Another interesting thing. I see something I want to get it, but what am I going to give up to get that? What am I giving other people possibly to buy that? I might be able to buy that one too, but you don't know. Here's an interesting part of this. The part that these structure cards, they score the same. They're all 50 points, but the cost varies. Some people online have complained about this. Well, why does this cost less? We all get 50 points. Friedemann Friese put a really interesting design philosophy he had about, he doesn't like everything to just be like calculating victory points. That's boring. He never wants anyone to really know who's in the lead. I mean, think of some of the games he's done, like Power Grid stuff. They're all like that. But one thing is he's like, players often have this thing in games where you spend resources and you get something. You fulfill some sort of objective or contract or whatever, and you get a certain amount of points. The next player that does it, they get less points. The next person after that, they get less points. But guess what? They're giving the same exact goods. So people are okay with spending the same goods and getting less points if they're there later, but they're not okay with spending more and getting the same points. It's the same thing in reverse, but these people are complaining. I don't get it, but I thank Friedemann Friese for taking the time to go over his design philosophy. The guy's a genius. But I like that aspect that they all cost the same because it gives you they all give you the same points. Gives you hard thing. When do you turn your engine into just buying a bunch of these cards that cost a little less? You don't want to do it too early because then you're not going to be, and if you do it earlier than other players, then you're really taking a strategy of rushing the game and trying to put a bunch of houses and have a bunch of workers and get the rail going. And that's another thing. You can change the time and the altering of the end game, and I love that in games, and it's really interesting here. Lots of different strategies here to go by. This feels like an absolutely epic game that only takes about an hour to play. Like, there is a lot going on, and quick and easy, but man, it makes your brain happy, and it feels like you played a big game, but it was only an hour long. It's fantastic. Negative side of things. So Friedemann Friese, again, as I mentioned, does things that are very snappy and quick, and turns are fast, and mechanisms are easy, but for some reason in his games, the sort of maintenance steps tend to be fiddly. There's a lot of fiddly maintenance steps in Power Grid. The person that's running it really has to be on their game. When to take things out, when to do this. A lot of his games have this. And quite frankly, I'd rather have the mechanisms for most of the players be easy and have it be a little bit harder on one person, because that's typically me. I'm fine with that. Player aid would have helped. There's one for the bureaucracy. There really could have been one for the actions. Granted, the top action is the purchase, and everything you're purchasing is near the top of the board. The selling action is the bottom action on your rondel. It's everything at the bottom of the board. It makes sense. But sometimes early players could forget that you could sell 2 P for one action. Everything else is 1 in this game. But that one you could sell 2? It'd be nice for a reminder. They should have had a player with the details of each of the actions. The number of structures on the board. I don't get this. I get that you're building these beautiful structures all over the place, but why randomize the numbers on the board so they're not in any real order? It's like they should have just started with number 1 and then slowly went up the board to the end. They don't do that. They bounce all around. So first you got to find the thing. Oh, I got to find number 8. I got to find number 8. Okay, so usually I put them in order off the board. So you found number 8. Good luck going to find number 8 on the board. It's not near number 7 or number 9. Why? I have no idea. It just makes the game long. It just shouldn't be. It's a pain in the butt. It's not a big deal, but it's a nuisance. It really is, and there's really no excuse for it, really. The second half of the game, maintenance can be a little fiddly. This is what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes upkeep can be a little fiddly because in the second half of the game, you're adding peat to the market as the rails come out. So you get to bureaucracy and you're like, oh, I'm going to remove a bunch of peat because I move 5 peat because I have 5 houses. And I have 3 workers. So now I'm getting 3 sets. That's $12. But now I'm adding 3 railroads. Now when I add 3 railroads, I'm going to be adding 3 more peat. And so it's like I took peat off. I did this. Now I put peat back on. It feels a little fiddly, but I get why it's there. You get used to it after a while. In the second half of the game, it's like I basically take the peat I'm selling, I hold it in my hand, I go this, I do this, and I put some back and I throw it in there. It's not a big deal. It's a little fiddly, not the end of the world, not a big thing. It is a little bit nuisance. You got to make sure people are doing it right. The person that's running the game really needs to pay attention because it is very important that you do it right. And it does slow it down a little bit. But those are all my negatives. This game is fantastic. Absolutely getting a Saxophone Serenade. It's staying in my gaming collection. I've played this 2, 3, 4 players. I've played it handfuls of times. This might end up being my second favorite Friedemann Friese game to Power Grid. That's how good this game is. And for all those reasons, Saxophone Serenade, stay in my library. I got to find something else to get rid of once this cycles through past the new arrivals shelf. If you like economic games, if you like Friedemann Friese games, if you like Power Grid, if you like economics, if you like engine building, if you like all this stuff and you like lots of thinking, quick turns in an hour, who doesn't? This is fantastic. Findorff, this has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games, helping you find the next one you'll love. Let's hit it. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table into a high-quality gaming solution, but they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with over 20 styles of thematic game mats in 11 different sizes from notable board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and real cool accessories, experience what thousands of other gamers enjoy by upgrading every game you play with a Game Topper system. Save hundreds of dollars on Game Topper package deals that are in stock now for immediate shipping at GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.